This is Auschwitz. Viewed from above, it resembles a tranquil resort. Lush orchards of apple, pear, peach, and plum trees, their boughs heavy with ripe fruit, cast cool shadows across the grounds. No one, without prior knowledge, could ever imagine that this was once a living hell on earth. This place also marks the triumphant military career of one of the most influential officers of the Third Reich, Rudolf Höss, a man often described as a master of the SS Secret Service, a servant of unwavering loyalty to the Führer, Adolf Hitler. Let's look at the screen. We are seeing a map, a vast network of concentration and extermination camps built by Nazi Germany in the occupied territory of Poland during the Second World War. The largest of them, Auschwitz, spanned an immense 40 square kilometers. It was nestled in a secluded valley, its dense forests providing excellent camouflage. This was likely one of the reasons the Nazis chose this location. It was also a critical railway hub, where lines converged from all across Europe, from Germany, Italy, Russia, and even Finland, funneling victims to their doom. Here, the indelible mark of one man is felt above all others, Rudolf Höss, a man whose ordinary daily life would give no hint of the monster within. Indeed, in the film The Zone of Interest, directed by Jonathan Glazer, the daily life of Rudolf Höss rarely ventures beyond the idyllic walls of his villa. Just on the other side of that wall, the most brutal acts of genocide were taking place. By focusing on this stark, unadorned reality, the filmmaker exposes the deeply abnormal psyches of Höss and his wife, Hedwig. Unlike many other films about the Holocaust, The Zone of Interest does not graphically depict the horrors of life and death under the Third Reich. Instead, it relies on the chilling power of suggestion, hinting at the crimes against humanity through fleeting glimpses of the crematoria smokestacks and a meticulously crafted soundscape, a constant, distant hum punctuated by gunshots and faint, desperate screams. The story isn't just about the Third Reich. It's about a much larger question of human nature. As filmmaker Glazer explained, the voice inside that encourages us all, the capacity for violence that we all have. For me, this is not a film about the past. It is trying to be about the present and about us and our similarity to the perpetrators, not our similarity to the victims. The film diverges significantly from its source material, the 2014 novel of the same name by Martin Amis. In the book, a fictional Nazi officer falls in love with the wife of the camp commandant, a character modeled on Höss but not explicitly named. For his adaptation, Glazer removed the love triangle and made the connection to the historical figures explicit. His goal was to immerse the viewer in the mundane daily activities of the Höss family, creating an environment that feels like a chilling surveillance documentary. To achieve this, Glazer filmed the interior scenes using hidden cameras. The central conflict in the film arises when Hedwig objects to her husband's promotion. The new post would transfer him to Berlin, forcing her to leave the beloved home she has built just on the other side of the walls of Auschwitz. At his wife's insistence, Höss persuades his superiors to allow his family to remain while he relocates. The family is only reunited when Höss is given an even greater, more monstrous responsibility, overseeing Operation Höss, the deportation and annihilation of over 400,000 Hungarian Jews. It all happened in less than 2 months in the summer of 1944. The question of what his family knew and the extent of their responsibility looms over the entire film. Hedwig and her children were not directly involved in the administration of Auschwitz, but the film masterfully illustrates their complicity. In one scene, Hedwig casually tries on a luxurious fur coat, stripped from a woman who was just murdered. In another, their eldest son, Klaus, examines a collection of gold teeth, pulled from the mouths of Jewish victims in the gas chambers, with a flashlight under his bed covers. In one of the most horrifying sequences, Höss and his children are enjoying a swim in the river when he inadvertently brushes against a human jawbone floating in the water. This gruesome discovery sends him scrambling back to his home in a panic to scrub himself and his children clean. So, who truly was Rudolf Höss, and what was the SS? Why was he shrouded in such mystery? First, let's go back to October 4th, 1921. The Nazi Party established its paramilitary wing, the SA, or Sturmabteilung, stormtroopers. Because of their brown uniforms, they were known as the Brown Shirts. The head of the Nazi Party, Hitler, was also the supreme commander of the SA. Their initial duty was to provide security at Nazi rallies, break up the meetings of rival parties, and violently suppress anyone deemed an opponent of Hitler. The SA was initially commanded by Ernst Röhm. However, as the SA grew increasingly undisciplined and powerful, Hitler sought a more reliable and loyal force. He officially established the SS, the Schutzstaffel, protection squadron, transferring his most trusted men from the SA and supplementing their ranks with recruits rigorously indoctrinated in Nazi ideology. The SS soldiers wore menacing black uniforms, similar to Mussolini's fascists, earning them the name Black Shirts. The SS had its own system of ranks, distinct from the German army. Upon joining, every SS soldier had to swear an oath of absolute loyalty, not to Germany, but to Adolf Hitler personally. Initially, the SS served merely as Hitler's personal bodyguards. It wasn't until 1929 that Hitler found the ideal leader to shape the SS into his vision: Heinrich Himmler. When Himmler took command, the SS numbered only around 200. Under his fanatical leadership, it grew exponentially, eventually dominating every aspect of German life and becoming a name that inspired terror across every territory occupied by Berlin. By 1930, the combined forces of the SA and SS exceeded 100,000 men, outnumbering the official German army, which was still restricted by the Treaty of Versailles. On July 26, 1934, as a reward for their role in the bloody purge of the SA leadership during the Night of the Long Knives on June 30, 1934, the SS was made an independent organization, separate from the SA, answering only to Hitler. With their superior discipline and fanatical loyalty, the SS quickly eclipsed the SA in power. This was partly because Himmler held immense authority within the Third Reich, reporting directly to Hitler without having to go through any other minister or general. A professional military branch, the Waffen-SS, was developed as a second army alongside the regular Wehrmacht, equipped with powerful artillery and armored divisions. Comprised of ideologically hardened fanatics, the Waffen-SS eventually grew to 38 divisions with a fighting force of 800,000 to 950,000 men. That was the SS. But who was Rudolf Höss? Born into a devout Catholic family in a German spa town on November 25, 1901, Höss was baptized as an infant. He was a regular churchgoer throughout his youth, and priests were frequent guests in his family's home. His father dreamed that his son would one day become a priest. But a single childhood experience instilled in him a deep-seated distrust of the clergy, ultimately leading him to abandon the church. As historian Father John J. Hughes recounted in a 1998 lecture, Höss was once given a 2-hour detention at school. With his typical conscientious nature, he mentioned this minor infraction during his weekly confession. However, he didn't tell his family, not wanting to spoil his parents' Sunday. That evening, Father Hughes continued, Höss's confessor, a good friend of his father's, came to visit the family. The next morning, Höss's father scolded and punished him for not reporting the incident immediately. Since the family's phone was broken, no other visitors had come, and none of his classmates lived nearby. Höss concluded that the priest must have broken the sacred seal of the confessional. Höss himself wrote, "My faith in the holy promise of the priesthood was shattered, and doubts began to rise within me. After this incident, I could no longer trust any priest." He changed confessors and soon after stopped going to confession altogether. Instead of pursuing a life in a seminary, Höss joined the army and served in the First World War. After a brief stint in a military hospital, at the age of 14, he was accepted into the 21st Dragoon Regiment, the same unit his father and grandfather had served in. By 15, he was fighting alongside the Ottoman Empire's 6th Army in Baghdad, Kut al-Amara, and Palestine. While stationed in Turkey, he was promoted to sergeant at just 17, becoming the youngest non-commissioned officer in the German army. During his service, Höss was wounded 3 times and contracted malaria. He was awarded the Gallipoli Star, the Iron Cross First and Second Class, and several other decorations. He also briefly commanded a cavalry unit. In 1922, after hearing one of Hitler's powerful speeches in Munich, he joined the Nazi Party. Soon after, Heinrich Himmler, the commander of the SS, invited Höss to join his ranks. Höss revered Himmler, treating his every word as gospel. He dedicated himself to building the ideal of the Third Reich, serving at various concentration camps between 1934 and 1940. He worked at Dachau and Sachsenhausen camps that, at the time, primarily held political prisoners. Having deeply impressed his superiors, he was appointed commandant of the newly established Auschwitz camp. In this role, Höss transformed Auschwitz into the epicenter of the Nazi killing machine. He identified Zyklon B, a cyanide-based pesticide, as the most efficient method for mass gassing. As Höss himself would later admit, gassing was preferred over shooting because the latter placed an enormous pressure on the SS soldiers responsible for the executions, especially since women and children were among the victims. Höss approached the prospect of mass murder with cold, systematic precision. In her 2020 book for History Extra, historian Lawrence Rees wrote, Höss was not just a robot blindly following orders. He was an innovator in the organization of genocide. At its peak, the gas chambers of Auschwitz could murder 2,000 people per hour. While this was happening, the Höss family lived in a luxurious villa within the camp's zone of interest. A Polish man who worked as their gardener testified after the war, "They had everything in that house. They wanted for nothing. They had a massive supply of goods accumulated from the camp." Furthermore, he noted that the Höss couple held deeply anti-Semitic views. According to him, Hedwig believed all Jews must disappear from the face of the earth, and that eventually the Jews in Britain would meet the same fate. Rees writes, Höss joined the SS because of his absolute belief in the grand vision of Nazi Germany. In the film, Höss is transferred to Berlin in late 1943 to become the deputy inspector of all concentration camps. The SS commandant was pleased with his progress, describing himself as a true pioneer in this field with new ideas and educational methods. In May 1944, Höss returned to Auschwitz to oversee Operation Höss, the plan to bring 440,000 Hungarian Jews to the camp in just 56 days. The Auschwitz album, a collection of photographs preserved at Yad Vashem in Israel, captures the chilling images of these individuals arriving at the death camp, where the vast majority were sent immediately to the gas chambers. These photos stand in stark contrast to a collection of snapshots seized from SS officer Karl Friedrich Hocher. In those pictures, taken around the same time, Rudolf Höss, Josef Mengele, and other SS officers stationed at Auschwitz are seen singing, relaxing, and participating in the camp's official ceremonies. Auschwitz represented the final moments for newly arrived Jews and a source of perverse pleasure for the SS officers. It is a feeling both heartless and strangely comprehensible, reminding the audience of the zone of interest of the fraudulent humanity of the Nazis. So, for all his war crimes, what was the fate of this man and his family after the war? When the war ended, the Höss family went into hiding in northern Germany, hoping to eventually escape to South America, where many other Nazi officials sought refuge. Hedwig and the children lived above a sugar factory in a coastal village, while Rudolf moved to Flensburg and worked on a farm under the alias Franz Long. It took a full year for the authorities to finally track him down.
Brigitte Höss, Rudolf's daughter, recalled, "My brother Klaus and my mother were taken to a prison. British soldiers beat him terribly. When my mother heard her son's agonizing screams from the next room, Like any mother would, she decided to protect her child, so she told them where my father was. The officer in charge of the manhunt was Hans Alexander, a German Jewish refugee who had fled Berlin in the 1930s and joined the British Army. One night, when Hans Alexander and his team arrived at Höss's door, the former commandant denied his identity. But his wedding ring, inscribed with the names Rudolf and Hedwig, exposed his lie. After his capture, Höss testified at the Nuremberg Trials, providing detailed information about the mechanics of the killing machine and his own central role in perpetrating the atrocities at Auschwitz. He was one of the first high-ranking Nazi officials to openly admit to such crimes, accepting responsibility for his actions while many others denied any wrongdoing. Transferred to Poland, Höss was tried for murder and sentenced to death. While awaiting execution, he wrote his autobiography, famously describing himself as a mere cog in the great annihilation machine created by the Third Reich. On April 16, 1947, Rudolf Höss was hanged at Auschwitz before a large crowd of former prisoners on a gallows constructed right next to the old crematorium. After Höss's execution, his family struggled to survive in a country trying to forget its past. As the widow of a convicted war criminal, Hedwig received no pension or government assistance. She couldn't find work. Her grandson, Rainer Höss, has speculated that she survived on money provided by a network of former Nazis. Eventually, the eldest son, Klaus, moved to Australia, while his daughter, Brigitte, first moved to Spain and later to the United States. The family rarely spoke of Rudolf Höss, attempting to hide their connection to the Nazi regime and downplay the crimes of their late patriarch. Höss's great-nephew, a journalist named Thomas Harding, interviewed Brigitte while writing a book about his great-uncle Hans Alexander's hunt for Höss. In 2013, the Globe and Mail quoted Harding about the interview. "She told me that her father, Rudolf Höss, was the best father in the world. He used to read them stories and take them out on the boat. The whole family loved him. There were two sides to him, the father and the commander. What I discovered is that a person can be both a human being and a monster. And that is what is so frightening. It could happen again. That is why we must remain vigilant."